Today we're going to talk about home prices in the city of Everett. Second quarter has just finished, and I want to talk with you about what we're seeing in the market, where home prices are going, and what's going to happen for the rest of the year. We're also going to take a look at economic news that's affecting you right now, such as interest rates and inflation real quick. I'm Anton Stettner. I've sold thousands of homes here in the Seattle metro. I live here in Snohomish County with you, and I've been looking at this data since 2003. I'm an avid investor, so I'm always looking for deals. We sell a bunch of real estate. We're always helping buyers and sellers. So I dig through this data as a nerd and then give it to you how we see it with no spin attached to it. There's no fluff. We're not trying to sell ads here. This is the actual data that we are sharing. So let's take a look at the 10-year treasury, interest rates, inflation real quick, and then we're going to dig into the data. Okay, the average sales price in Everett last month was $651,166, down 2.6% relative to June of 2024. Let's look at the median. The median was 650, down 1.9% relative to June 2024. Let's look at it on a rolling 12 because this kind of smooths the data out. When you're looking at it on a monthly perspective, that is taking into account each month as its own data point. This takes it into account as a rolling 12. A rolling 12 is generally a little bit more accurate because it smooths the highs and the lows out, puts us at 650,000, which is up 7.4%, but it's been pretty flat in the median price for most of 2025. You can see it right there in the data. And the average price is 658,000, up 7%, but it looks like we've kind of already peaked for the year. And this is very common when you go through and look at the home price data. All of the appreciation happens in the spring market, and generally it stops by June. The market will be flat for the rest of the year or trend slightly down. This is very common. Why? Because it's Washington, we're the evergreen state. So as winter gets closer, as fall gets closer, we know what happens. The clouds come out, the sky gets gray, we get more rain, but more rain means less people want to buy and sell real estate. We want to buy it in the spring before the summer because when summer happens, it's beautiful. We want to go play. So right now it is one of those a little bit slower times of the market. It's a great time to buy because most people are trying to go on vacation right now. This happens basically mid-July to the end of August. And then what happens in September? In September, right after Labor Day weekend, the market turns right back on again. Let's look at new listings. So new listings, let's unsmooth it, go back to the monthly. New listings, there were 261 last month, up basically 34%, but still not as high as they were in 2022. Let's look at it on a more historical average. Oh, I did that 12 months. I meant over a longer period of time. I mean, you can see Everett's still not back to even 2022 levels, which is different than a lot of the other parts of Snohomish County. Other parts of Snohomish County are back to pre-COVID levels, showing in their numbers of this particular set of data. Let's look at homes for sale. Drop this back to 3 years. So number of homes for sale up 74%. That's a massive increase, but let's look at it over a longer period of time. That puts us back in line with almost with the peak, slightly above the peak of 2022, and definitely below the peak of 2018, and slightly above 2019, okay, in the number of homes for sale. Let's look at pendings. Pendings means they have accepted an offer and are waiting to close. Pendings are down 3.2% for the month. Closed sales are down 12%. And so one thing that we have seen this year in 2025 is the market appreciate less this year than it did in 2024. We have seen higher inventory, slower sales, more days on market. The market slowing down. What I've heard though from some sellers, what I've heard from some unexperienced agent and from the media is the sky is falling. We're not seeing depreciation in our market. We're not seeing massive foreclosures. We're seeing a slowing down in the appreciation. And we're seeing it take a little bit longer to sell sell homes. The market is simply returning more to a more normal market. But as we looked at rates earlier, and we talked about rates trending down, as rates trend down, more buyers will enter the market and expect this appreciation to pick back up again. That's simply what happens inside of the data. What's the average days on market? 21. So really, it's still 3 weeks. That's not that bad. That's below some of the other cities here in Snohomish County. The months of supply of pending is 2.8. 2.8 months of supply. You can think of it very simply that this is still a seller's market. It's just not the white hot seller's market when we had less than a month or a month and a half. The mistake that humans make is we make assumptions based on math and data and our world. And that assumption is what it's like today will magically continue and everything will just be the same over the next 5 years, 10 years. But real estate markets are dynamic and they change. And this example is inventory rising. But inventory rising doesn't mean we're not in a seller's market. However, this does create more buying opportunities. That's the thing to understand. So let's look at the percent of original list price because this is one of my favorite little pieces of data. Percent of original list price, generally speaking, in Snohomish County is around 98%. Above 98% means some bidding wars are happening. Below means, the market's slowing down. You can see in the winter, we were around 97%, which is one of the absolute best times to buy in Everett. And then the market peaked in April of 2025 at 99.9. And last month it was 98.7. So if a property was on the market for $100,000, it sold for $98,700. That's what that percent of original list price data is telling you. What this data is also telling you is that there are some properties that when they hit the market, they are still having bidding wars. And there are others that are either not in the best condition, not marketed properly, or priced too high, and they are not having bidding wars and are having to do some type of price reduction. That's what the data is showing us. I also like to look at price per square foot. So the average price per square foot last month was $407. A fun thing to look at if you are a deal hunter like me is you can look at this data and you can go resort MLS listings based on price per square foot. The one with the lowest price per square foot and the highest days on market might be one that you should make an offer on because that might be a possibility of getting a deal. Let's look at shows to pending next. So the number of showings to get an offer in Everett last month was 12. However, the average property only received 4.7 showings. So the thing to understand is if you have a listing on the market and you only receive a handful of showings and your property is positioned correctly inside the market, it's being marketed correctly, and its condition is superior to the other properties around it or comparable, then the only thing left is to adjust is the price. This is not a market clearly in the data where we can go after the wish pricing, where we can price ahead of the market. Plus, because we're now in the second half of the market, prices generally soften for the rest of the year. So I'm talking to you buyers, pay attention to this. I'm talking to you investors. Our investor deal season is almost over. As rates come down, more investors will enter the market, more buyers will enter the market, and there will be more competition. Sellers, Everett's still pretty good, but there are parts of Everett where you need to really be positioned and priced correctly and have good condition in order to obtain a sale. What I want you to realize is that these real estate statistics are for the whole city. So for your situation specifically, or your property specifically, we'd have to dig into the actual neighborhood, into what's happening in the market and that property. If you have questions about any property specifically, feel free to give us a call, hit us up at resg.com, drop any questions there down in the comments. Subscribe if you live here in the local area and you want to see more content about real estate investing, land development, the market, and just how to make more money in real estate. I'm Anton Stetner. Thanks for watching.